Well, we've talked about the new additions to the Predators roster, but it's time to talk about the players Nashville lost.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Tuesday episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everydayers who tune in each weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, Emma and I are going to talk about the friends we made along the way. That's right. The big news is, of course, who is coming to Nashville, but we would be remiss if we didn't take a minute to talk about the players who departed the lineup this offseason and talk about what those moves may mean for the Predators going forward. But before we dive into all of that information, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as those playoffs wind down. Those sports stop sportsin' like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma. So we've talked about these exciting new additions to the Predators lineup, but we probably need to talk about the players that we won't be seeing again on the ice or in the locker room. And there are a couple of these ones that, like, personally, I'm a little heartbroken about. So if you had to say, like, who is the hardest goodbye for you from the lineup, who would that be?
Oh, don't make me choose.
I know
That's
it's really horrible, isn't it?
Because I think my two favorites are probably also your two favorites, but
Probably.
it's a toss-up between Kevin Lankinen and Kiefer Sherwood for me.
Yes.
It's gotta be. They're, I mean, as people, but also their contributions on the ice as well. I mean, the Predators were, to start with Lankinen, the Predators were extremely lucky to have a backup goalie of his caliber these last two seasons.
Right.
And because of how lucky they were, you know, you kind of knew it was going to have to come to an end at some point. And unfortunately, his time has run out. He's still unsigned somewhere. So that
I am shocked, and some team is going to be very fortunate when they sign him.
They are. And I am very curious now, like, once he does eventually sign, now that all of the dust has kind of settled from free agency and we saw what Scott Wedgwood signed for in Nashville, I am very interested to see what kind of contract he gets. Lankinen does when he does sign.
Yeah. And we talked about this on Friday's episode where we kind of featured Scott Wedgwood, talked about this signing. But I am with you. Kevin Lankinen is a tough loss in net, and obviously just, you know, in the locker room. I always felt like conversations with him were always so interesting. I really believe that you have to be a different kind of person to be a goaltender. And that doesn't mean that you have to be like overly arrogant or overly confident or that, because I wouldn't describe UC Saros or Kevin Lankinen as arrogant in any way, shape, or form. But you have to have just a very different mental space to play that position in hockey. And I always so appreciated how Kevin Lankinen was really open and was really good at talking about the mental component of being a goaltender and being a goaltender who wanted to be a starting goaltender, but who was a backup to UC Saros. So there was not a conversation with Kevin Lankinen that I left not feeling like I just learned something really useful about his role, but also just about life. Again, Kevin Lankinen, future life coach, you have your
100%.
first two clients right here.
Yes.
100%. We did have a great question come in via our insider program, Emma. And this is one you and I had texted with you about it. And we were like, ooh, we should talk about this one because this is a tough question. This question came in on our insider line. Personal feelings aside, already you're killing me, but I'm
You
gonna
know
try.
your audience.
You know, I have read like a book. But personal feelings aside, who is the better backup for Saros talent-wise? Lankinen or Wedgwood? Oof.
That is not as straightforward of a question, I think, as one might want it to be. I think that it depends on so many things. I think that the shortest answer that I can give is that neither one is a bad option.
Very
I
true.
both very good options. I think it depends on how much you're using them. Like the usage is going to be huge because again, I would say Kevin Lankinen got underused when he was in Nashville, especially now that you want Saros to be your future for 8 years. Then maybe we gotta start giving him some more rest, even though I'm sure he doesn't want that. Wedgwood has been a starter. And he can't, I mean, technically Lankinen has too, but very briefly. And
Right.
was a starter on a team that wasn't giving him much help in front of him. So I don't know if you say talent wise, like that's just such an open-ended question. I mean, they're both NHL goaltenders. They could both be starters. To me, neither one is UC Saros, but that's okay because you have UC Saros.
Yes.
I think to me, I don't even feel fully equipped to answer this question only because I've seen Wedgwood play. I have not seen his work ethic. Like I haven't seen how he works behind the scenes. Like Kevin Lankinen was a horse. Like he was
Oh gosh, yeah.
working hard. And I'm not speculating whether Wedgwood does or doesn't. I don't know. I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him from that side of things. And so I don't know. I think that one thing I can say for sure, because I've talked to a lot of guys who have played with him, is that Wedgwood is a locker room favorite. And it makes me very excited for media with him because it sounds like similar to Lankinen, you're always going to get, good conversation from Scott Wedgwood. He's a little more experienced. He's 31 years old. He's been around the block a few times. I think he's going to have some good insight to the game. And that's why I always love talking to backup goalies because I feel like they spend so much time sitting and watching the
Yes.
game that they always have like a different, a really, really good perspective on things. But that's getting off of a tangent. I would say my short answer, neither one is a bad option. I think that they're both, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. If there was anyone who is going to back up UC Saros, who I would feel confident in, that's not Kevin Lankinen, it was Scott Wedgwood, even before the Predators went and signed him. I'm not just saying that because they have signed him. I said this well before that. So I think the Preds are in a really good situation.
Yeah. I'm with you in the sense that it's very, very difficult to answer that question when you're talking about talent. I do think that we've seen different situations from these two players. We talk about, Lankinen really was underused in Nashville. He had 17 starts last season. He played in 24 games, but he only had 17 starts last season. Scott Wedgwood had 28 starts last season. And I think if you're looking at usage, the usage schedule of Wedgwood, I think, is going to be complementary to hopefully what the Predators are going to do with UC Saros now that they signed him, like you said, to this 8-year deal. Y'all have got to not work him like an absolute dog. Like you've got to kind of find a different flow for him. And I do think Scott Wedgwood is very used to that kind of schedule. I think Kevin Lankinen was excellent in hard road starts against hard teams, where I think maybe he had the advantage in that way. But I think if you're talking about how you plan to use this backup goaltender, maybe Wedgwood is just more used to popping in and out than Lankinen was. But I agree with you. You cannot go wrong with either one of them. Of course, the Predators went with Wedgwood.
You can't go wrong. And it was, especially at the price point, you weren't going to get Lankinen for less than $2 million. And I think that, like you said, the schedule is a big piece. Wedgwood had more starts last year, but 11 of those, 28 came in a row because Ottinger was hurt. In Nashville, thankfully, it's a good thing we never had that situation with Kevin Lankinen, because it would have meant that UC Saros had been hurt. But we haven't seen Lankinen's ability to handle something like that. Not saying he couldn't, but we just don't know.
We just haven't. Right.
We know that Wedgwood can. I think he went 6-3-2 during that 11 game, start stretch. And like you said, the schedule, it was more rotational. I think it was about like every 4 starts he would rotate in for Jake Ottinger. And talking to people, people who cover Dallas, they, people who are more familiar, obviously, with their situation than I am, they have all said that kind of rotational schedule is what kept Ottinger so sharp. And that that was beneficial for him. And they were in a really good cadence there. Jake Ottinger called, I think he did an interview with, I want to say, the Dallas Morning News, where he said, after the season was over, that Scott Wedgwood is my favorite goalie, tandem partner that I've ever played with.
That's impressive.
And so, take that for what you will. I certainly don't think Ottinger is going to come out and be like, yeah, he's all right. I'm sure, but it seemed like he went out of his way. And again, Ottinger, from everything I've heard, he sounds very Kevin Lankinen-like, in the sense that he will be out there. He's always willing to do what's best for the team. He will put in extra hours out there. If Juuso Parssinen wants to work on his shot for an extra hour and a half, Scott Wedgwood will be out there with him to help him. And that's the kind of guy that you want on your team, I would think.
Yeah, he's going to be a really fun piece to watch as he comes into Nashville, again, filling big shoes, especially filling big hearts here at Locked On Kevin Lankinen. But I do think that Wedgwood is going to be a really important piece for the Predators going forward. We'll see how he meshes and how they work that goaltending rotation next season. They're going to have to do something with it, I think. Coming up, we're going to talk about whether Brady Skjei is the perfect replacement for Ryan McDonagh. And we got to talk about some forwards. This episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Look, we all love sports. We love them so much. We don't ever want them to stop. But friends, the playoffs are over. We got fewer games going on now. Those sports are not sportsin' like we want them to, but FanDuel is going to let you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. Right now in my house, we are loving the WNBA action, and FanDuel has plenty of betting options for women's basketball. How many double-doubles will Angel Reese record this season? Is Caitlin Clark the shoe-in for Rookie of the Year? They have action on all those WNBA games as well. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So later in this week, we are going to be talking to a Tampa Bay Lightning insider, Deandra Liu. She covers the Tampa Bay Lightning for the Hockey News. She is going to share her perspective on this Steven Stamkos to Nashville signing. And y'all, the perspective in Tampa Bay, that feeling, that vibe, a little different than it's feeling in Nashville right now. We're also going to have a crossover with two of our very favorite Locked On hosts, Chris and Kyle from Locked On Abs as well. So make sure you tune in this week for those episodes. Right now, we are talking about the players that are no more with the Nashville Predators. Of course, we touched on this when we did our Brady Skjei episode as well. Ryan McDonagh asked to be traded back to Tampa Bay. And Barry Trotz, I thought this was really interesting, said in his media, my number one priority was replacing Ryan McDonagh, was filling the hole that I created by doing a solid, as he said, so hip, so cool, Barry Trotz, by doing a solid for Ryan McDonagh and brought in Brady Skjei. Look, Emma, when I look at this, when you look at numbers, when you look at production, when you look at skill set, obviously Ryan McDonagh, 2 Stanley Cups, more years under his belt. But you can't feel horrible when Brady Skjei comes in to replace Ryan McDonagh. Like Barry Trotz, when you said you were going to fill the hole, you did a great job with that signing.
I'm going to be honest, and I would venture to guess that there's probably a healthy number of people who do not agree with this. But what else is new? I think that Brady Skjei is actually a huge upgrade from Ryan McDonagh.
Lay it out for us, Emma.
Lay it out. A few reasons in a Z formation. I think that, first of all, if you look at the money, that just the financials alone, Ryan McDonagh was making $6.75 million a year. Brady Skjei now makes $7 million. That's essentially, they're making the same amount, right? So people were upset about the term on Skjei's contract, I think, 7 years. I mean, I think he could probably make more per year somewhere, but to get him down to 7, you had to offer him that term to be able to get him at that, like lock him in at that price. So it's business. You gotta do it. So like, again, financially they're about the same, except that obviously Skjei's term is longer, but he's also younger. I know people say, oh, he's 30. First of all, calm the heck down, everyone. 30 is not that old. 30 is the new 20, as far as I'm concerned.
Come on.
As far as I'm concerned. And don't let his gorgeous head of salt and pepper hair fool you. He is
Silver Fox.
He is listen. He is only 30. And I think that he is more defensively responsible than Ryan McDonagh is. I think he is going to contribute more on offense than Ryan McDonagh did. And I think he's going to be able to, yes, Ryan McDonagh filled a role on this Predators team. I kind of liken it, just not completely, but just go with me on this. It's similar to how we said, Colton Sissons. We love Colton Sissons here. He is not a number 2 center, but he had to be the number 2 center because there wasn't really anyone else that could step up and fill that role. And he did fine, but like there's probably someone who could do it better. And so that's kind of how I feel about Ryan McDonagh with the Predators. He could do everything. He could play those like long minutes, and he could play on the top pairing. He could, kill penalties. He could do all those things. But I think he was relied on maybe a little bit too much, given, the fact that, yeah, he's older. He's a little bit older. He's kind of slow. He made some, I'm not saying he didn't do good things, but he made some sloppy mistakes. Now he did usually make up for them pretty quickly.
He usually corrected his own, but
he usually did. Yes. And that I think is a sign of maturity. And, obviously he would put the puck on the other team's tape quite a bit, but he would be the first one, hauling his butt down there to block the shot. So it's nice when you see that, but you would rather it not be on the other team's tape in the first place. For essentially the same price, you are going to get more out of Brady Skjei than you would out of Ryan McDonagh.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge Ryan Patrick fan.
Yes.
Love Ryan Patrick. But I had to look at the numbers, and this is kind of what I looked at. And when you go back and you look at the last 3 seasons of these two players, and keep in mind, yes, Ryan McDonagh was on the Predators in, quote, a reset year, but he also, you're looking at some Tampa Bay time here as well. Ryan McDonagh averaged 26 points and was a plus 15 over the last 3 seasons. Brady Skjei,
Come on.
averaged 41 points and was a plus 15 over the last 3 seasons. So you are bringing in a top tier defenseman to replace a top tier defenseman. And I'm with you. I know some people are like, this term. Look, if you were going to bring in a top tier guy, you have to know at 7 million, you have to know that maybe the last year or two of that contract is going to suck a little. But
And
those are contracts. That's just contracts.
That's how it works. You weren't going to get him for 7 million a year at a shorter term. He would probably go sign somewhere else that would offer him more. So I think, yes, absolutely. And I think special teams is another thing to point out here.
Yes.
The Predators, especially after that weird little kerfluffle with Tyson Barrie, and then Tyson Barrie wasn't in the lineup anymore. So Ryan McDonagh was quarterback in the second power play unit a decent amount last year, which again, he can, but is he the best option? Probably not. Like, I think Brady Skjei, you put him on your second power play unit. Ooh, your power play just got a lot better. A lot better. So
yep.
And
that's
deeper.
An area the Preds absolutely have to improve on. And, you know, you can look at, you know, Stamkos and Marchessault and say, oh man, they got better on the power play, but bringing in Brady Skjei, that helps the power play as well. And you don't want to underestimate how important it is to have a really good second power play unit. 2 forwards that the Predators lost it, and we just knew them for a brief time. We were ships passing in the night. Jason Zucker and Anthony Beauvillier. Really kind of want to focus on Jason Zucker because it sounded to me at the end of the season media with Jason Zucker that he was maybe going to be back. He said, look, I've made it very clear to Barry Trotz. I made it very clear to Bruno. I want to come back. You know, and I think he was one of those players in the Vancouver, you know, first round series that stood out, you know, maybe didn't jump off the score sheet. He had a goal and 2 assists, although a goal in that series was
a goal and 2 assists is a big deal in that series.
That's like a windfall of offense from that series, you know, but Jason Zucker did not get signed back here with Nashville. He signed with Buffalo for a 1-year, $5 million contract. I think Price probably had something to do with this. I don't think Nashville was going to offer him anywhere near a $5 million contract. So for me, I think that's where we lost Jason Zucker. Rhymes with hooker.
Yeah, I think, you know, that he and Beauvillier truly were just the friends we made along the way, because I think that Price is big. The Preds weren't going to offer him close to that. But I also have to imagine, you know, I don't know exactly what the timeline was on this, but like, even if, let's just say, I'm making this up, but let's just say he said, you know, Zucker said, well, I'd be willing to sign for 2 years at $4 million or $3.5 million a year. Obviously, that would be less per year, but we don't know when Barry Trotz and the Predators really had the ball rolling. When did they know that Stamkos was a real possibility? When did they know that Marchessault was a real possibility? We know that they were targeting Skjei, that they were targeting, you know, a defenseman, like you said, to after he did McDonagh solid. So once, you know, I think it's, maybe we thought that something like, all right, we can go kind of like, we could sign Zucker for $4 million a year and then go get maybe like another like middle tier forward somewhere. But then once you catch wind of the fact, oh, Steven Stamkos has entered the chat, and now we're going to go, and I like that they did this, we're going to go get the best player available.
Yes.
And you know, they did it with him, they did it with Marchessault. Again, I don't know the exact order of events there, but I am sure once they were made aware that it was a legitimate possibility, you know, that they could get these big fish, they had to cut
it loose.
They had to
put
cut
the eggs in the big basket.
Yeah, and they had to let Zucker swim to Buffalo, where he could get 1 year at $5 million. Beauvillier, I think he signed 1 year in Pittsburgh for $1 million. I'd say that's about what he's worth. I think that's a good, you know, contract for him. You know, Zucker was great. Like you said, he was great last year in the playoffs, especially. But theoretically, if you have goal scorers of the caliber that they just signed, you don't necessarily need a Zucker as much as you would have last year.
I would agree with that. Coming up, Emma and I are going to talk about the one that probably, I would say, maybe hurts the most. And also, surprisingly, I would say the player that may be hardest to replace. Friends, we're talking about Kiefer Sherwood. We mentioned earlier in this episode, we had a question come in on our insider program and want to invite you to be a part of that too. If you have some questions, if you want to chat Nashville Predators hockey outside of the podcast, we are kicking off a new Locked On Predators insider program via subtext. If you're excited about the upcoming season, these new prospects, if you have questions about lineup and you just want to talk more with Emma and I about Preds hockey, you can do that via subtext. You're going to get some bonus content. You're going to get immediate breaking news reaction from us. We're going to give you in-game analysis during the season and a chance again to ask your questions to Emma and I. And friends, we're likely to incorporate them on the show like we did today as well. So if you are interested in the insider program, check out the program details by clicking the link in our bio or the link in our description. All right, Emma, let's just talk about the one that hurts the most. This and surprisingly, I would say of all of the players that Nashville lost, this may be the toughest one to replace specifically. And my friends, that is Kiefer Sherwood. This was kind of a weird season for him. In and out of the lineup, was a healthy scratch at time. But when he found his role, he executed that role to near perfection and really was a player who turned things around for Nashville. And his line was a changing line for this team. Kiefer Sherwood signed a 2-year, $3 million AAV deal with the Vancouver Canucks because they found him as absolutely annoying as fire to play against in the postseason and said, we'll take that. Thank you. I spent some time yesterday and it hurt. It crushed my soul, Emma. I listened to his media availability with the Vancouver Canucks media. He just talked a little bit about Vancouver's style of play really fits his identity. I think he hits the nail on the head with like very similar system, very similar styles, similar coaches as well. So I think Vancouver is going to be a great fit for him. How do you begin to replace Kiefer Sherwood's very specific role with the Nashville Predators now that he is with Vancouver?
Well, one thing I think too is that yes, he fell into that role on that identity line, and that's when he really started cooking this last year. But I think we've talked about this before, that has not always been his game. Like he developed into that. He is the epitome. When you talk about a team first player, that is Kiefer Sherwood. He will do whatever he needs to do to be valuable to the team. He will go put on some goalie pads if you ask him to. Like he will do whatever is needed of him. And so I think that's incredibly valuable to have. But also, I know there's been some talk. I don't know if it was the general manager in Vancouver. Someone, I guess, made a comment, and I think it was like a passing comment, but of course Canucks Twitter just took it and ran with it, that we potentially see Kiefer Sherwood having a more elevated role than he did in Nashville. Now that says to me two things. Number one, clearly you weren't really looking at Nashville and his role there, because I think you just look on the surface and saw fourth line winger, so you're like, oh, But I think we know that for the Predators, their fourth line was hardly a fourth line in many ways. But so that's one thing that I would say Vancouver fans maybe are overlooking, is like that. Okay, he already had a pretty elevated role in Nashville. Don't get hung up on the fact that he was on the fourth line. Yeah.
It's not about the label.
Don't want to put a label on it. So I think that's one thing. But also people are in Vancouver, at least, are up in arms about oh no, this is terrible. Like he's, he's not a volume goal scorer. Why are we going to put him up on the second line? Or, which again, nothing is set in stone. We haven't even gone to training camp yet. So everybody calm down. Please journey back with me to the 2022-23 season when Kiefer Sherwood was on a line with Tommy Novak and Luke Evangelista during that big stretch down the stretch where they almost made the playoffs.
Right.
That was their most productive line, like consistently. That was the Predators' most productive line. And he can play that role. And like he is very good at, even if he's not the one putting it in the back of the net, which he often isn't, and that's okay. He is out there creating space. He is, again, just like Vancouver, when they said, yeah, he pissed our guys off too much. We had to go get him and get him on our side. That's what he does. And he'll get out there. He's like a wrecking ball out there. He'll go out and he'll create space. He'll create lanes for the real, skill guys, the high skill guys to just go and do their thing and not have to worry. To any Canucks fans who may hear this, I would say, just wait. Just wait. You're going to love this guy. You are going to love this guy.
Yeah. When I look at how do you begin to replace somebody like Kiefer Sherwood, who is a hockey chameleon in a lot of ways, when you're looking at straight apples to apples comparison, the player that comes to mind first for me is Zachary Leroux with a butt. Not Zachary Leroux with a butt. I may need to edit that out. With an except, because hear me out. I need you to go with me on this, Emma.
I'm coming with you.
Pull it. Zachary Leroux reminds me so much of Kiefer Sherwood. Of course, he does that physical play. Of course, he has a whole verbal game going, which, we're going to need to refine some of that game there, Zachary Leroux. But he also is that playmaker. He also can play with some speed. The except that I was referring to earlier is that the experience level may not be there to bring Zachary Leroux in and say, hey, here is our replacement for Kiefer Sherwood. I just don't know that Zachary Leroux is quite ready for that. But when you're talking down the road about a player who could fit the role that Kiefer Sherwood had here, that's somebody. As far as next season, when you look at say they keep McCarron Smith together, who would go well with them in the absence of Kiefer Sherwood? Juuso Parssinen, maybe?
To me, as soon as I saw that Sherwood had signed in Vancouver, I said to myself, Juuso Parssinen's got a spot waiting for him on that line.
Yeah. I think you're looking at somebody with that physicality. You're looking at somebody who has that high end kind of playmaking skill. I think he's got a good shot. And I think if he can correct a couple of the things that Bruno wanted to see from him last season, if that time in Milwaukee helped him marinate, I think he is the player right now that may be the next Kiefer Sherwood-ish type player. But gosh, Kiefer Sherwood, it's hard not to take it personally, friend.
You're getting a good one, Vancouver.
You are getting take good care of him.
Yes.
Take good care of him. Here's what I will wrap up the Kiefer Sherwood discussion by saying, I want to be a fly on the glass when Sherwood comes back, because his mouth and Michael McCarron, and what is he gonna say to these guys? Because he never stops talking. So it would be very, very fun to hear him give it to some of his former teammates. But
actually, I know some people on the video team in Vancouver. I should do a petition to get him mic'd up for that game.
I am just begging you,
just for giggles.
Absolutely, I am begging you. Yeah. So those are our ideas of how the Nashville Predators are going to deal with some of the losses in the lineup. I think they've got some pretty good replacements waiting in the wings. Of course, we got to wait till training camp to see how it all sifts out, but lots to talk about between now and then. So make sure you stay tuned to the podcast. You can follow us on social media at LO_Predators. You can find our shows on your favorite podcasting platform. And of course, on YouTube, be sure to subscribe so you'll know when we have our newest episodes dropping. Emma, where can everybody find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.